recording. Please keep your microphones off and your video off. I believe it's off already, but please do that so that as we go through the presentation. If you have questions, put them in the chat at the end of the presentation. I will go through the questions and answer questions once I'm finished with the presentation. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. This presentation will be available on the counseling website under the 10th grade in a few days. So you'll be able to go back and review anything that's there, especially the calendar that's listed for you to look at. So let me get started. I'm going to share my screen. And whoops. This is no, hold on one second. Okay, so this is a sophomore family night and it's the presentation. I'm Sue Nadel. I'm one of the college and career counselors at JP Stevens. And as you can see, again, as I'll reiterate it again, this presentation is being recorded. And also, please make sure your video and microphone is off. If you have questions, please place them in the chat and I will answer questions at the end of the presentation. The presentation will be available on the counseling website in a few days. So this is the agenda for the evening. We've got a lot to cover. So I just put it out there for you. We're going to talk about the counseling resources, a 4-year plan, parents' role, students' role, life after high school, talking about choosing the right college for students, a little bit about testing, paying for college, and we're going to talk about the SCORE platform that we are using as a great platform going forward. So the counseling department has both school counselors and college and career counselors. There are 10 school counselors and 2 college and career counselors. And the college and career counselors, I am one, and I am responsible for students whose homerooms end in an odd number. Ms. Silverberg, who is the other college and career counselor, is responsible for students whose homerooms end in an even number. We all work together with the school counselors. We're a team. And our job is to support and assist students on their way. Obviously, you want to talk about mental health. The school counselors are there to help with all kinds of issues with regard to mental health going forward. In addition to the school counselors and the college and career counselors, we have what's called path counselors. And path counselors are come to us through a partnership with the Rutgers Behavioral Health Program. And they are available to help students at a higher level, with a higher level of concern. We also have a thing called the Zen Zone, where students can actually go within the counseling office, which is where all of our offices are. And if they just need a few minutes to decompress, to deal with whatever issues are bothering them in the process. And then, of course, there's a number of resources available to you. If you have any questions, you can contact your child's counselor or call the counseling office for assistance. I always like to start off with a little joke when I start. And obviously, if you remember when your children were young, you couldn't get them to go to school possibly. And when they go off to college, you're gonna be holding them back. Please don't go, please don't go. I remember that with my own son when he went to school. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about a 4-year plan for students. Now, obviously, your children are in their sophomore year, so this is kind of a 4-year plan, a general overview of things that are important with regard to things to be thinking about. For example, everyone took the PSATs and the results were available in back in December. Basically, now is a good time to start thinking about what students might be doing. As a matter of fact, over the last few days, if you're not aware, the school counselors were meeting with all the sophomores in their English class to go over a program called Youth Sciences, which is connected with our SCORE platform that we use, where they basically, it's an assessment that the students had to complete on their own. And basically it explores aptitudes and it covers students' natural talents. Excuse me, I just need a little water. The natural talents. It helps them match up with possible careers that they can go on and explore. And I'll explain more about that a little bit later. And basically it helps them to gives each student personal feedback to the answers that they specifically asked and put in. And it's a great way to start exploring careers and their interests. Okay, obviously this plan has what's going on in junior year, a couple of things. Obviously they'll take the SATs, and it's a great time to start exploring schools and visiting colleges and things like that. And obviously the summer before the senior year is a big time, a very busy time. Students begin to fill out applications, finalizing college lists, and get themselves ready in terms of moving forward there. And obviously senior year, some of the things that are important, they'll fill out what's called a FAFSA, and they will work on their, if they need to retake SATs or ACTs, they'll do that. And then they basically will apply to colleges in their senior year in the fall and in the spring. Basically, they'll hear back from the schools and make that final decision and it's really important that they pay attention to all the deadlines that are coming up, that come up in the process, and follow those deadlines. So first, basically your role, obviously, in this process is obviously as a parent, well, you want to basically, your child better than anyone else. And you kind of the goal is to go with your parenting instincts, keep those lines of communications open with your child, make sure they get enough sleep and that they have a balance between their academics and their social life. And also that they don't get too much stress, and everybody's stressed now. They manage their time well. Your job is, to attend activities like you're doing this evening and pay attention to things like that and help them organize their visits to schools once they start visiting colleges, which obviously they won't be driving yet. So you'd have to take them to go visit those schools and things like that. So it's always a good idea to try and spend some time together, because when they go off to school, you'll miss them. Trust me on that one. Basically some tips for students, and if there are some students here, obviously they want to challenge themselves, but not get in over their heads and take courses. You want to show progress in a variety of different areas that you're working in. You want to also take things that you like, try out a few things, see what you like, some of the electives, make some choices that in terms of, well, yes, I really like computer science, or no, I don't really like computer science. I like architecture, engineering, the intro to engineering courses, business courses. Take some of those courses to kind of get a sense of what areas you might be interested in. And also it's okay to be, if you're interested, fun too. Be involved in in the band, the orchestra, choir, lots of different things, art classes, all kinds of things you have to do, some of which are required as well. So then another thing to do is get to know, students should get to know their counselor. It's important because as they get to know the counselor gets to know them. And then when it's time to write that recommendation for college, counselor's got lots of good things to say about the student and knows the student well. They should do their research and enjoy and begin to explore colleges and careers in the process, and discover things that are interesting for them to do. This was a quote that I just recently read, and I loved it. I'm going to read it to you, even though you can read it yourself. Students should spend their high school years participating in organizations and activities that bring them joy. By exploring genuine and authentic interests as you move through high school, you'll learn a lot about yourself and will be best able to showcase your talents to colleges when the time comes. And this was basically from the director of undergraduate admissions at Boston College. I thought it was a well said, succinct way of explaining what besides the academic sides, to try and find out what they're interested in, as well as it'll give them students something to write about when they have to write college essays later on. So it's a great thing. It sums it up perfectly. Okay, so life after high school. There are many things that students can do after they graduate high school. They can go to work and go out and get a job and go to work. They can take courses, programs, and career training programs and apprenticeships. Just think about, somebody who is an electrician or a plumber. Every time you have to call somebody to come to the house, they make a very good living and they do really well. Someone who doesn't want to necessarily sit behind a desk all day, wants to be able to out and moving and doing different things, working with their hands. Great apprenticeships are available. Obviously, going to a four-year college and getting a bachelor's degree, or possibly before that, going to a community college and get that 2-year associate degree. There are vocational schools where you'll actually learn trades and so forth. There's also art schools, special schools for programming. Students sometimes take a gap year if they're not sure what they want to do. And then, of course, there's always the military that students can always go into the military as a possibility. So that being said, here we go. The road to their future starts now. So applying to schools, I'm going to move this to the bottom, I think. There you go. It's really a match. You're looking for the match. Students need to know who they are, know about themselves, know where they're going. And by doing that, they will find out what their priorities are, what's important to them. They're looking for what's their interests, what are their strengths. Now, the U Sciences, assessment that students just took helps with that. What's their learning style? What are their goals? How far do they like school? Are they interested in going to school for a long period of time? Okay, it's important to be realistic and maintain perspective. That's probably the most important thing in this whole process of figuring out what students are going to do. And of course, deciding where, the location, how far away, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. And of course, the researching of opportunities. And like I said before, the most important thing is to be realistic and maintain perspective in the process. So now it's time to talk and think about college. And our Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, there you go. I can't believe that movie came out in 1990. That's a long time ago. Okay, so college isn't really a prize to be won. It's a match. What's the best fit? Where is the place where your child is going to do well? Again, trying to maintain that perspective in terms of it. Do well and have opportunities available to them. So it's really important to think about it in that regard. So when you think about it, a lot of times thinking about college students, they feel pressured. I want to go to a good college. What's a good college? What does that mean? Good college according to who? A good college is the place where your child is going to thrive, do well, and they'll be happier. And guess what? When they're happier, you're happier too. So that's all about that, finding that good fit, that place that makes sense. Okay. There's lots of factors that go into making choices about college. I'm going to give you some ideas about things to think about and to discuss with your children. Because we all know, if I asked you all to list 5 colleges, I have a feeling that there'd be common schools on the lists, and there'd be all schools that we've all heard of. But that's only a small amount of schools. That list of maybe 30 schools that everybody has on the list. If I took off Rutgers and I took off all the Ivy League schools and I took off all the top tier schools, you'd be like, I don't have many schools left. There's lots of places. There's almost 4,000 schools in this country. So there's lots of places where your child can be happy. So when we talk about colleges, there's different types of colleges. Okay, there are the 2-year junior colleges, community colleges, Middlesex College. They're the 4-year bachelor's degree institutions, the colleges where you get a bachelor's degree, or a college or a university. We use the terms pretty much interchangeably. Vocational and technical colleges and career places, career schools. And then there are colleges with special focuses. There are schools where you want to study theater, the arts, music schools, art schools, very focused in terms of what they offer. I'd like to stop here and talk a little bit about community colleges, and obviously our local community college is Middlesex College, that it serves a really good variety of needs. Vocational, you can get at a community college at Middlesex, you can get a vocational certificate, which is a short-term program. You can get an associate degree, and that's a terminal degree that you basically get your associates and then go out to work. Or you can also take a transfer degree where you start off your first 2 years at the community college, and then you transfer to a four-year institution to finish up the last 2 years of your college education to get your bachelor's degree. In the state of New Jersey, there's a law that if you get an associate degree, 60 credits will automatically can transfer to a four-year school. And you can transfer to any four-year school within the state for that. It could be Rutgers, but it doesn't have to be Rutgers. It could be many other places. So there are some advantages to going to community colleges first and starting there. It is the cheapest way to go to college by taking those first 2 years. That's those general education courses. You only take a couple of courses in the area you're focusing on, but then you're taking all the general courses at the community colleges. And that's much cheaper, a cheaper way to go to school. Class sizes, there are no large lectures at the community college. Classes are very similar to the way they are in high school. And you can have a variety of your educational goals met by doing the community college, and then transfer on to the four-year school. If students don't do well on the standardized tests, community colleges don't need them. If you do well, if you don't do that well, you don't have to send scores to community colleges. There's a program called NJ Stars. If your child ends up in the top 15% of the graduating class, they can go to the community college for free. There's also the New Jersey Community College Opportunity Grant that's available at all of the 18 community colleges. If a student is eligible, as long as their family income is under $65,000 a year, that will cover the cost and make going to the community college free. So therefore, when that's the case, you're talking about saving a lot of money, because you then you go the first 2 years there, transfer to one of the other, a four-year college, and get the bachelor's degree in 4 years, in the last 2 years, and you've saved tuition for 2 years of tuition. So it's very reasonable. It's a very reasonable way to go to school. So let's talk about some things when you're researching schools and thinking about colleges and how to make a decision in terms of colleges. Okay. Things you want to consider: the institution type. Is it a very focused school? Is it a university, a large university? Is it a smaller college? Is it a liberal arts college? So things you want to consider is the campus size, the physical size of the campus, but also the enrollment size of the campus. Is it a large institution? Is it the size of, say, Penn State with 70,000 students on it? Rutgers, Rutgers, New Brunswick, with 5 campuses and 40,000 students, 35,000 students on it. Or is it a smaller place, like maybe a Montclair, which is like 17,000 students? Is it the size of maybe, say, a Seton Hall? That's a much smaller school. Is it a small liberal arts college like a Drew, which is like less than 2,000 students? So that's kind of things to think of. But also, so the class size and the geography of the campus. Is it large? Is it small? How do you get there? For example, Rutgers, New Brunswick, you need to take the bus system to get around to the different campuses. So can your child navigate the bus system? That's important. Also, geography. How far away from home is it? Do they offer the major that you want, that your child would want to study? Do they offer housing? And if they offer housing, do they offer housing for all 4 years? Or is it only first year or first 2 years, and then they have to move off campus? Extracurricular activities that they offer. Say your son or daughter is really interested in marching band and wants to continue it in college. Not all colleges have marching bands. And some are very competitive marching bands. Some are not as competitive to be a member of them. You know, what kind of social life is your child going to have at school? And of course, the cost is always a factor. And, but the thing about the cost, I'd like you to, as you start looking at schools, don't look at the sticker price and hold that in abeyance a little bit, because it's a possibility that your child might do well, might be eligible for merit-based scholarships at certain schools that are private, that the sticker price might be higher, but they get a scholarship, which brings the price down to be the same as going to a state school, or maybe even cheaper than a state school. Sometimes that happens. And lots of students, when you get your financial aid package, that's what happens. So the costs are important in the process, but it's something that once you start looking into it in more detail, you can determine. Every college has what's called a net price calculator on their website that you can actually look at, put in your income, put in GPA, this child's GPA and scores and all of that information, and see, kind of get a ballpark about what it might cost out of pocket expenses. So when I talk about location, something that I always like to bring up about it, you can see that I have Edison, New Jersey and Edison right there, okay? When you talk about location, do they want to be in state, out of state? Do they want to commute, live at home? Or are they going to go away? Are they going to be driving? How far away are they going to go? Is it a couple of hours? You can get to them within a half a day or a day, or are they going across country and you only can get to them by flying? So the distance from home, there's a couple of things you need to think about. And there's no right or wrong in this decision in terms of deciding about schools, because everybody says, oh, they can go anywhere. They can go to California, they can go here, they just the best school that's possible that I can go to. Well, when you think about that, something to consider in the process that you need to consider really strongly is, if they go to school on the West Coast, they won't be coming home too often because it's very expensive and they fly and it's a full day traveling back and forth. So that's 2 days off the trip when they come home or away. Other things you probably aren't thinking about, or you haven't thought about when you say, okay, when you start thinking about that possibility. The summer opportunities that are available. Are they going to spend their summer on the other coast? Because that's where the summer jobs and opportunities are available, because they're near the college. Who comes onto campus to recruit? They may end up settling out there on the other side of the country. Something to think about. There's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of preference, but it's something to consider in the process. For example, most schools have, or for the most part, 2 semesters. They have a break for the Thanksgiving break. And they're closed could be closed for a week, could be closed for a few days. Are they going to come home if they're on the West Coast? And then the semester ends a few weeks later. Are they coming home and then coming home again? Are they going to be away for the Thanksgiving holiday or not? So that's something to think about in the process and as you're making the decision. And of course, people say, it's okay to go East Coast, West Coast. I don't want to go anywhere in the middle of the country. There's some great schools and great places. Great opportunities in the Midwest. Some great places to think about in that as a possibility. So it's a matter of preference and desire, and there is no right or wrong in this. I just bring it up as something to consider. Okay. So again, you discover about your preferences by exploring some local colleges, because if you haven't been to a lot of college campuses, there's things to think about and how to get a sense of what that's like before you start traveling all over to take a look at schools. Now, it's okay to do that if you happen to be going on a vacation and you decide to go, oh, let's go look at schools in Boston. Wonderful, fantastic. We're going on vacation and we'll check out a couple of schools in Boston while we're there. Fantastic, great. But to do it easier to start as with sophomores on a weekend, you can go take a look at schools. So look at the size of the school. Some of the smaller schools, Drew University, FDU, and that's in Madison. These are all small schools. Stevens Institute of Technology, smaller schools to take a look at. Kind of get a feel. Is this a kind of place that they're comfortable, that they'd like to be, or and it's too small, too confining for them? It's totally personal preference. So mid-sized schools, Seton Hall, TCNJ, Ramapo, they're about 6,000-ish, 7,000, like under 10,000. Larger schools, Rutgers, New Brunswick, Montclair State, Rowan, bigger places. Okay. Even larger, you could also go out of state and go see Penn State, for argument's sake, which is rural, but which also meets other criteria. Then, of course, is it an urban campus? Right? NJIT, Rutgers, Newark, NYU. Is it a suburban campus? Drew, Fairleigh Dickinson, Montclair State, TCNJ, Ramapo. Is it more of a rural setting where you go there and there's nothing more than the campus? Penn State, 3.5 hours away, is a very large institution. It's in the middle of nowhere. You're going for a long ways where there's nothing around. The campus is Happy Valley is the campus, and that whole area, that's what it's known as. And that's kind of that feel of a Penn State. So these are places to go on a Saturday, on a weekend, to take them to get a sense. They may not be the schools that they want to. If they happen to be the schools and your child falls in love with the school and this is where I want to go, you're set. You're ready to, you know what the list is, you know where you're going to apply. But if you want to, it's just to get a sense of what other schools, of what kind of feel and what it is like and what it would be like in terms of the kind of campuses. And that will help figure out what other schools are similar to those schools and offer the courses and the programs that they have. So now college visits have changed over the last few years because of the pandemic. There's been the rise of virtual tours, virtual tours, information sessions, student panels, college classes, of course, all kinds of things. And every school has them now on their website. So it's not a bad idea to do some virtual tours and do some info sessions and start learning about the schools before you go take the trip, because it's going to cost time and money to go visit those schools. So that's a great thing. So I recommend doing some of that. And the student needs to do some self-introspection to look inside and decide what it is they want from the college, to research colleges from home first, and then go make visits. It'll make it more efficient and more fun. And you kind of, yes, this is the main thing. I have a friend, this is before the pandemic, when her son was looking at schools. There was a time the parents went, let's go, we're in the car, we're going. He looked around the camp, they got in the car, they got to the campus. He looked around, he didn't even get out of the car. He wouldn't get out of the car. He did not like that school. It was a wasted day. It was a nice, I mean, I guess it was a nice car trip, long ride somewhere, but because he didn't like the school. And it doesn't make sense to force your child to go look at a school where you're not interested in it, because if they're not happy, you're not going to be happy. So it makes sense, but so do the research first before you go visit, and then say, okay, these are schools. Yes, I'm interested. They go on the list. We're going to go visit the school. Okay. Then you plan to see the schools in person after you've done the research online. Okay. So I guess college visits, kind of, you're doing some browsing, you're kind of getting general information. That's what I was giving you, that list of just some places to look locally. You kind of browse, get a sense. Then it helps you figure out what things the colleges offer. What are the common things that college has that the students, that those colleges have that the student would want. And then basically it will help exploring visits, also help once you've applied. At the end, when you're down to a couple of schools, you may have to go back. They may have to go back and visit again to say, yes, this is it, or no, this is not it. All colleges have accepted students days after the students get accepted. And that way you go there to get a better sense of, yes, this is it, or no, before you've committed to the school. It's actually a helpful way to determine, yes, this school makes a lot of sense. This is the school I want to be at, or no, this is not. As a matter of fact, my son applied under one thing. He changed his major at Accepted Students Day because he decided he wanted to go in a slightly different direction than he was going in initially when he applied. Thank goodness the school that he decided that he wanted to go to had what he wanted, and changed his major right at the very beginning. So he never had to change his major while he was actually in classes in school and didn't lose any credits. But it was like, we were looking at schools and putting a list together of schools that had one major. And then he said, no, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. Okay. His school, we were lucky. We didn't have to change schools. Again, this is just an example of a virtual tour that schools have. This happens to be Stony Brook, the main quad of the academic mall of Stony Brook. And you'll notice that they have a long list of a variety of different places to look at and different places to visit on the virtual tour. Okay. So when you want to visit schools, okay, you want to sign up online or call the admissions office of the prospective college. Okay. Try to visit, at this point, try to visit schools during your vacation times. Teachers Convention, spring break, President's Day. It's always best to see a school when classes are in session. And obviously some schools at this point are having visits, others are not because of the pandemic. You kind of have to look ahead and sort of check out ahead of time and see. The tours have probably changed. They're probably not going into academic buildings as much as they had prior to the pandemic. And they're probably not checking, you probably can't see necessarily go into dorms. There's a few things that are more than likely different, but they are having visits, and students are doing tours. They are doing information sessions on campus. A lot of schools are doing them, or if they're not doing them right this second, they will be doing them in the spring as the spring develops. So take a tour of the campus. When you get to go to campus and when things open up a little bit more and you're able to do it, eat in the dining hall. Why is that important to eat in the dining hall? Well, if the student is going to live on campus, they're going to be eating in the dining hall. If they don't like the food, a few years ago, I went to go visit a school. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but I actually asked, since we have a lot of students who are vegetarians, I asked the question, what kind of options are available for vegetarians? Now, the tour guide, who didn't know very much, he was a student, and I want to say that I asked her that question. He goes, they can have salad. I went, okay, that's not really a great option for, so he hadn't been trained enough to know that. And that was an area of the country where they're probably, I guess, I mean, there are vegetarians everywhere, but I don't know. Anyway, so it was kind of an interesting take on things. Obviously, when that opens up a little bit more along the way, not yet, but later on, when really deciding on schools, making that decision, there are colleges that offer the opportunity to sit in on a class or two so that a student can. A lot of schools now have the opportunity for you to sit in on when there's some sort of virtual class, they might let you sit in on a virtual class these days. Obviously, once things open up again, check out the dorms, because if a student's going to be living there, you want to make sure that they're going to be comfortable in terms of there's like lots of different housing styles. I'm not going to go into major detail about that now, but I have my own room now. I'm going to be living in a room with 3 other people. I'm living in a quad, or I'm living in a suite, and that's okay. There are a couple of bedrooms. I have a roommate. I'm okay. I can live with that. And then we have a common area. Lots of different ways. There's also the halls, the bathroom. You have to walk down the hall to go to the bathroom. It's a much more communal living style. So there's a variety of different options. There's apartments where there are actually places where you can actually, that's usually for upper class students, but some schools have it when freshmen can live in apartments and actually have a kitchen. So it depends upon the school. So obviously begin to visit, but I would say virtual visits first as soon as possible. Do those visits of the local schools to get a better sense would be a really great idea. Finding the best fit, and don't rely on the hype of a school. it's not about the hype. It's about what's the best fit for your child. Don't, they shouldn't be picking a school because everybody they know is going there. That, everybody from JP is going there. That's not the reason to pick a school. Is it a good fit for your son or daughter? That's the key. Financial aid is always available. There's all kinds of it. There's merit aid available. Don't rule the school out, like I said before at the beginning, as you're just beginning the process because of the cost, the sticker price. There's some resources, the SCORE platform, which I'm going to go into a little bit more later on. Obviously, the College Board website has a place to do different searches. There are lots of just to go to the college websites, do a Google search of a school, and it'll come up and you can go exploring that way. There's all kinds of books, college search books that can be used. School counselors, Ms. Silverberg and I, as the college counselors, have lots of information in terms of assisting in the process. So the goal in this process of figuring out schools is to start off with a list of approximately 20, 25 schools, and eventually narrowing it down to 8 to 10. Okay. Don't forget that when a student applies to school, there's a cost involved in just filling out the application for the school. And in that 8 to 10 schools, 1, 2 reaches. A reach school is a school where your child is below the mid 50 percentile and is below, it's going to be a reach. By the way, every single Ivy League or top tier school is a reach. Any school that has an acceptance rate under 20 is a reach school, because that means they deny more students than they accept in terms of the applications. NYU has 100,000 students apply to it every year, and it's a big school, but that's a lot of people applying. Not everybody's going to get in. So it makes it a reach. They have an acceptance rate under 20%. All of the Ivies have acceptance rates under 10%. Stanford, 4%. So it's very competitive to get into these schools. Target schools, match schools, school where your student is right in that mid 50 percentile, kind of right there. Yeah, okay. And that's it and above. And a safety school is a school that the likelihood of your getting in there is I don't want to say it's 100% guaranteed, but it's pretty close. Okay, that your numbers are way above. Now, schools that are safer or on the target side, there's a possibility of getting merit money from those schools. The reach schools, they don't have to give you the money because you're not someone that they're trying to entice to go to that school. And when you talk about the safety schools, it's got to be a school. Well, yeah, okay, I'll apply to school X, but I don't really want to go to school X. I'm way above the numbers for school X, but I don't really want to go there. That is not a safety school. It's got to be a school that that the child is willing to go to and will be happy to go to. Why? Because it's possible that might be the only school they get into. So it's got to be a school that they're willing to go to. I'm going to switch gears and we're going to talk a little bit about different testing. Now, just as an aside, couldn't have happened at a better opportune time. Not that it is going to affect your sons or daughters, because it is digital, the SATs going digital, that just came out yesterday. The issue with that is it's not going to affect your sons and daughters because it's going to go into effect for the spring of 2024. By the spring of 2024, your sons and daughters will have already finished their testing and will have already applied to college. So it's not going to affect them. Okay, it'll affect the freshmen, but not the sophomores. Okay, and that just came out. I was just looking at that yesterday because when I saw that, I went, how's that going to affect the sophomores? I better change my presentation. And it doesn't affect you. So it doesn't affect this. Yeah. Okay. So obviously students take the PSAT in school and they took the PSAT back in October, and they should have been able to get the results in December. And basically it's verbal and math abilities, and it's practice for the SATs. Okay, taking it in 11th grade, the PSAT in 11th grade is where the National Merit Scholarship draws its information to determine who National Merit Scholars are. Oops. There are two different tests. There's the SAT or the ACT. So what's the difference? They are pretty much the same. Well, not the same, but the two tests, all colleges that accept the tests will accept all, either or, SAT or ACT. It's a matter of personal preference. Because we are located on the East Coast, which is where the SAT developed from, offer the SAT as for the most part in school. But we also offer the ACT on some Saturdays. But the SAT is much more, is given much, more students take it than the ACT. Although in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if the ACT becomes, students begin to take it. Now, the difference between the SAT and the ACT, they're both about the same length. They both don't have a penalty for right or wrong, for taking a guess and getting a wrong answer. You only get credit for what you get right. Both have math and reading and writing and English sections. The ACT does have a science reasoning section on it. That's one of the differences of between the two tests. And the SAT has a section in its present format that you cannot use a computer, and it's actually have to read in the numbers and so forth. There's no computer that you actually have to work out the problems and answer it in a grid format. Now, since the pandemic, this has been existing since before the pandemic. It's called, there's a test optional policies. It's called fairtest.org is the website to go to look at the test optional, what schools are test optional. Now, pre-pandemic, there were more than 1,000 four-year colleges and universities that didn't use the SAT or ACT as part of the admissions process, or a variation of that. Since the pandemic, obviously, back in 2020 and into 2021, lots of students weren't able to take the SATs and so forth. So lots of schools put in place test optional policies. Well, this year, for the fall class, for the class of seniors this year, over 1,800 schools were test optional this year. The numbers, and a lot of schools are doing what's called piloting the possibility of not offering the SATs and seeing what that does. Because let's be honest, taking a test on a 3-hour test on a Saturday is not necessarily a great indication of success in college. A student's transcript, how a student's done in the courses that they've taken over 4 years, is a better indication of how a student's success in college. As a matter of fact, all the Ivy League schools and many more schools, or the California school, all the UC schools, all the California universities are all not using testing. They are all not offering, there's test optional and not needing the test. The tests for going forward for a period of time. I do not know the dates. It's kind of, each school is kind of setting it up and deciding year to year whether they're going to continue to be test optional or not. So how do you do the idea of whether or not a student should submit their test scores or not? Well, the answer to that would be basically, if a student does well, as in that mid 50 percentile or above for that specific school and what that school's mid 50 percentile is, submit the scores. If a student is below, don't submit the scores. Now, what's happened, because a lot of schools, all the schools were test optional, more students apply to schools that would not have considered applying to those schools. So the numbers are going up, the number of student applications are going up, so the number of acceptances and the acceptance rate is going down, which means that it's becoming harder to get into schools, because students who might not have applied to certain schools because my test scores weren't high enough are now applying to those schools. Okay, applying to more schools. And so makes it a little bit more challenging in terms of making the decision as to what to, and basically school counselors and college counselors, it's a discussion to have when we get there. We've got time, and we'll know more about where we're at next year, because we're a little early, but they should take the SATs and see how they do. If they do really well, great. If they're not, some students are just not great test takers. I was not a great test taker. I get all nervous when I take tests. So some people do great, others are not. That's not to me. College tests, AP testing. Okay, students enrolled in the AP courses should take the test. Okay, they're usually given. Last year they were given a different time because they were given at different times 2 years ago and last year because of the pandemic. But normally they're given the first 2 weeks first and second week in May. And most schools, not all, but most schools accept 4s and 5s. Some schools even accept 3s on the exam, depends on the college. Okay. If a student is spending that time to take the course, they should take the test, see how they do. If they don't do well, don't send your scores. And you don't send the scores until you know what school you're going to, because there's a cost involved in sending scores. College tests, there used to be subject tests. They are no longer being offered at all, anywhere, anyhow, any place. Now it's possible your son or daughter took a subject test. They're not being offered anymore. The College Board is they're gone. Last year, there was the end of them. So I just like to say that. So I'm switching gears again. We're going to talk a little bit about paying for college. Okay. There are different types of financial aid. Financial aid, the umbrella of financial aid, includes grants and scholarships, which do not have to be paid back. Financial aid also includes loans and employment opportunities, including work study. Those are the 4 buckets that are included in financial aid. This is just a brief overview about it. But there are resources and places to get that aid. The federal government, the FAFSA, which will be filled out in the senior year based on your income from 2022. This year's will be when they apply in their senior year, because it's prior year. It's a little bit confusing, but it's 2 years back, because that way all your information will be done, your taxes will have been done by the time they apply and fill out what's called the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. First word there being free. If somehow a website, I think they've actually done away with it. Years ago, there was a website that was FAFSA, it's FAFSA.gov. It's because it's a government program. Somebody got FAFSA.com and people were typing in FAFSA.com, and they went through the whole process, and then they asked you for money. First word is free. The application for the free application of federal student aid is what FAFSA stands for. There's also New Jersey financial aid. When you fill out the FAFSA form, you are automatically considered, if you've got a New Jersey school on your list, you're automatically considered for New Jersey financial aid. And there's some paperwork. You don't need to know all that now, because it's down the road and there's a lot of information. Outside organizations, your employers might have scholarships and information in terms of where you get stuff. There's a variety of different scholarship opportunities out there, and we even have scholarship opportunities that are available. We have the high school awards and scholarships that are available that students can apply for. Things like the Rotary, things like so many. I just got a bunch of them in today and posted a couple of things on our website today for seniors. So there's a variety of different scholarships out there. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about SCORE. It's pronounced SCORE. People are saying Squire, Square. It's pronounced SCORE. Okay. This is the platform that we use to do college searches, as well as when your sons and daughters are ready to apply in the fall of 2023, when they're applying to colleges, they will be using SCORE. And as a matter of fact, they already used SCORE, and they will have a SCORE account. They can invite you if they haven't done so already. Ms. Silverberg has been sending out invites to you. You can just go home and just ask them, invite me to your SCORE account, invite me into SCORE. And they'll send you an email, you get invited, and you can have a SCORE, you can go into SCORE so you can see their information in SCORE as well. So let's talk about SCORE. There's a lot to do. There's the career and aptitude test assessment, the U Sciences that, like I said, the counselor, or earlier I said that the counselors were in the classes for the last few days doing SCORE, doing the U Sciences assessment, explaining that to students. And that information's in there. Once it's in there, it's done, it's in there, okay? There's all kinds of college search tools. There's college profiles. There's admissions criteria and deadlines. There are scattergrams, which is basically information about applicants, former JP students, their applications, what happened, the results when they applied to schools. It's a general overview. When we have college visits, they will be in SCORE. Students will be able to see and sign up for visits in SCORE. And we send out email blasts through SCORE. This is how basically students can do a college search. This is what it looks like. And different images, the academic focus, different degrees they're looking for, the distance from home, if they are adding the test scores in, and the kind of setting they're looking for, and then they do a search. And we go to the next page. And then basically a list of schools will come up, decide if they are interested in following up and looking at that school. So they can customize their preferences and do a search to find things that they're interested, schools that they might be interested in, things that offer the majors that they are interested, schools that offer the majors that they're interested in. SCORE has a really interesting thing. There's lots of different, very interactive, there's lots of videos and things available on SCORE. This is called a wall, and there are all kinds of videos, everything from different departments to dorms, to the library, to student life experiences and so forth. Here you can see there's even the tour, and that was the same, similar to the tour that I showed you before, which I got off the website. This is one that's in the SCORE to do a virtual tour of the campus there. So there's all kinds of information and things to explore on the wall in SCORE. This is a scattergram. This happens to be Rowan University, and it tells you students who were accepted. The purple, you'll see the purple star is the student's specific information. All the students, this student is basically, this is a target school for this student based on where it's showing. It's right in a little bit above 50 percentile. It's a target school. If it was up here, it would be a reach school. If this, I'm sorry, it would be a safety school. If I said that backwards. If it was up here, the student was up here, then it would be a safety school. If the star was down here, it would be a reach. And this is based on former students, basically from graduates of JP and the results that they put in. Every year the students put in their information, and we get more updated information in terms of where the school is. And if you'll notice, you can put in the class structure in terms of making what years, okay, to determine how far back you want to look at it. You probably want a few years that are relatively recent in order to get good data in terms of who got accepted. Another way to look at this is, because that information is from JP and our stats tend to skew to the higher end of things, you can also do a college search through Big Future on the College Board website. Whereas in SCORE is giving you information that is JP specific in terms of the data, the College Board gives you national stats It's much more open-based in terms of, more broad-based in terms of a school, in terms of whether a student, where a student fits in terms of that school when doing a search. There are the types of school, the information is similar to do a search. 3,600, almost 3,700 schools that you can do a search in Big Future. I put that out there for that, for you to see that. Now, last thing I'm going to show you is the college website. I mean, the school's website, the counseling website on the school, which is part of the school website. Okay. There's a place to look for recent information. There's information about SCORE. That's where you'd find it. Financial aid and scholarships. Okay. Enrichment and summer programs are here. You can't see it. It's right on. It's on the bottom here. There's the calendar, the counseling calendar, things that are coming up, different events that are coming up that you can attend or get information about what's going on. As well as this presentation will be posted, and you see it has a sophomore 10th grade. It will be posted right on that, in that link. If you click on that link, it'll be posted within the next couple of days. This presentation will be posted there, so you can go back and look at it and check out at your own, in more any of the information, especially the calendar that I put up there, that's in there in more detail to get more information, as well as if you wanted to view this again, because it was a lot of information it's been a lot of information to cover. These are some upcoming events. Like I said, the school counselors met with sophomores to do the youth sciences and to help them understand the youth sciences assessment. Edison High School their spring college fair is March 3rd. Our college fair is always in the fall. Okay, it's usually in October. In March, counselors will be meeting with sophomores to go over scheduling for next year, sometime during the course of the month of March. In March into April. Okay, there are 2 programs that are coming up that might be interested to attend. They are both virtual. We are having on April 7th, details to follow on that. We are having a college-related program by Rob Franick, who happens to be the editor of the Princeton Review. On April 13th, we are having a college-related program, top 10 mistakes students make on their college essays. He gives an overview about the college process and college information, and then goes into more detail about the essay part. That's later on in terms of applying, but if you wanted to get a jump on it and attend this year, I would definitely attend it this year. He's an interesting speaker, as well as gives great information, and you might want to attend that, and then basically possibly attend it again, or another presentation that we'll have when your sons and daughters are juniors, getting ready for the senior year. And basically, just wrapping up right now, remember that everyone must follow his or her own path in life. Which way is your child going to go? What are they going to choose? What schools are they going to choose? It's a process. It's a conversation that you're having with them, helping them to figure out where they want to go, what their interests are, and deciding what they want. One thing I will tell you that's sort of interesting. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we haven't had them. We usually have, we've had alumni days, and when the JP students come back, alumni come back and talk to us about their experiences, and then they share that information with students. Hopefully we'll get back to it. I don't know if we'll have one in this spring or maybe hopefully next year. But when we have the alumni stuff, it's usually for juniors and seniors. And every year I always ask one question: how many of you changed your major when you got to college? Invariably, easily a third, sometimes a half, always a third and up change their major. Why? They decided they didn't like it. They found something they liked better. They found it was something that they had to take to get to where they were going. They were having a lot of difficulty with them. Students at JP sometimes have worked really, really hard and have been very, very successful. But sometimes students hit what's called, I like to call it hitting a wall, and then they have to figure out how to get around that wall. When something is harder, things sometimes come really easy. Hopefully they'll never face that wall, that they have to figure it out and say, you know what, I guess I'm not gonna, for me, I was never a super duper math student, which is kind of why I'm in the counseling field and people. I liked working with people. I always wanted to help people and do those kind of things. But I took some courses and I thought, okay, I'm struggling hard here, and it's only going to get harder the next course I have to take. So if I'm having a hard time now, how am I going to get to the next level if I can't get there now? So I figured obviously going into certain fields just wasn't going to work for me. So I had to find a different path that worked for me. So that's why I'm saying it's important to along the way to figure out what path they're going to choose, which way they're going to go. And students, it's okay if they change their mind and change the major along the way. With that being said, I basically have come to the end of my presentation. I've covered just about everything I wanted to cover. Talking a little bit more than an hour at this point. If you have any questions at this point, I will put them in the chat. There is, if you'll notice, if you can complete the survey for me, that would be great. It's basically go in and just fill out the survey. It's a couple of questions. I'll leave that up for you. You can get in touch with me by reaching out to me via my email. Send me an email. Ms. Silverberg sends her an email. She's responsible for students in even homerooms. I'm responsible for students whose homerooms end in an odd number. And I see that there are some questions. So I am actually going to leave this up and see if I can actually leave this up for a minute, and then I will take some water, and then I'll share I'll begin to answer some questions that are available, that are up there. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing, and that way I can see the questions. Okay, let me take it. Good question. Will federal scholarship scholarships, you mean the grants? They're not scholarships. They're not federal scholarships. They're grants. Federal grants and Jersey grants be granted based on on kids, on the earnings, parents and earnings. Yes, it's based on it's not the students don't have any income, so it's based on the parents' income. Absolutely. Okay, great question. Someone's asking about whether or not taking summer courses on leadership programs, things like that are 1 or 2 weeks long, whether they are helpful. I'm assuming the question is about helping to get into colleges. The answer, doing enrich programs that are summer programs, whether it be at a college that you want to go to, they are for enrichment purposes. Some people can't afford to do these things because there's usually a cost involved. It's for enrichment purposes. The student will learn a lot. It gives them an opportunity to get information to possibly write essays on and things like that when they're applying to colleges. If you can afford it, absolutely. They're great things and they're really, really worthwhile. If you're assuming that doing them is going to help get into a school and get you into a school, no, especially if you do say you do a program at one of the highly competitive colleges and you do a summer course there, or you do a program through them, it is not going to assist you getting into the school. It doesn't help. That's students do it. I'll do it because it'll help me get in there. No, it doesn't help. It's not going to make a difference because not everybody can afford it. And therefore it's not something that's considered, that's a myth. Okay. By the way, Ms. Hall and I are going to do a workshop on different rumors and myths. It'll be we're working on it now, so we're not sure exactly what date it is. It's going to be a coffee with the counselor in the morning, starting at before you start work. So it'll be like first period in the morning. It'll be virtual, just like this is. We haven't got the date yet, so just be on the lookout waiting for that. Let's see. Recommendations for SAT prep classes. There are many programs out there. Some are very expensive, some are not. There's everything from C2 to Princeton Review to to all kinds of other ones that are posted. Oh, there's been a couple listed. I didn't even remember the names of them that have been listed in the JPS Weekly. There's lots of things out there. You could just do a search of local ones. There are also ones that are virtual that you can do. There's Revolution Prep is another one. There's so many. There's Huntington Learning Center. Huntington does them. Depends upon what you want. If you're talking about classes, you're talking about individual. It's based on what your child needs and what you can afford, because they're not free. They do cost money. We have in the past, and I don't know if they'll be available this summer or not. We've offered, the district has offered a few things recently over the summer. I don't know what summer programs are going to offer this year, so I don't know the information. It hasn't come out yet. Let's see. Do I have any other questions? If you can stay on, I'll stay on and answer more questions. Otherwise, I've got some more messages to go through. Otherwise, I'm going to answer some more and go from there. You're more than welcome to go. Thank you for coming this evening. I usually say, thank you, get home safe, but I know you're just basically turning off your computer and going to wherever in your house. So, okay, let's see. What's the best time? The question is, when's the best time to start looking at schools? As soon as starts, like I said, I was saying about starting to look at the local ones just to get a sense, and then go out on vacations and places you want to go. Starting this summer would be great. But don't forget, most schools will not get be the same feel. Hopefully by the summer, they'll be more open to visits and things like that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Next year, next teachers convention, next spring, the spring break, because usually colleges are not on spring break when we're on spring break. So that's always a good time to go visit. Summers are great to get a feel from a campus, but it's not the same on a college campus in the summertime. There are always going to be less students on a college campus in the summertime. Oh, how does it reflect when a student takes the course but doesn't take the exam? It's a good idea to take the exam, see how they do. They took the course, that's great, as not everybody sends their scores in, because the colleges won't see the scores until you actually get accepted to the school. They'll see your transcript, which will have that you took the course. You send the scores to the school that you choose to go to. I mean, you can send them to every school you apply to, but that would be very expensive, because it's, I believe, $10. I think the numbers, last time I checked it, is like $10 per school per setting out the scores. So you want to wait to know what school you're looking at and then send the scores, because that's very expensive otherwise. And by the way, another myth I'll quickly tell you about: self-studying for SAT scores, for AP classes. Self-studying for AP courses is not, colleges, admissions people are not looking at self-study. They want to see your transcript. The self-studying is great, but they're not going to know that you self-studied. You can report it that you self-studied for something and took it, but they want to see the transcript. They want to see that you've been taking the course, and that's what it's about. So that you did great on a test, wonderful, but that's not really the best way to do it. How many colleges can a student apply to at one time? Students can apply to a lot of schools. All that's going to do, if you've done the research that's necessary to apply to colleges and done the research beforehand and made the list and narrowed it down to these are the schools I'm interested in, and done the research with the reaches, the targets, and the safe schools, you don't need to apply to that many schools. You don't need to apply to more than 8 to 10. And sometimes students apply to 2 or 3 schools, 4 schools. You don't need to apply to that many schools. So you can apply to, theoretically, as many, I don't want to say as many as you want. It's very expensive. Every applications can be $70, $80 per application. So it's an expense just to apply. Plus all the work. Sometimes applying to school, each school might have essays, an essay, then it might have supplemental essays, and there's a lot of things involved. This was an overview. We get more in detail of it each year as you get closer to the time. So I know you have lots of questions, but I also don't want to overwhelm you and stretch it out too much. So in terms of that, okay. Are there any colleges looking for SAT scores this year? Are there any colleges looking for SAT scores this year? Do you expect some colleges to still consider them in 2024? I think what you're, I guess what you're asking is, I'm not quite sure I understand what the question is. Schools that are requiring SAT scores will consider, if you take, in other words, are you taking, if you take the test scores in 10th grade, is that what, I guess that's probably what the question is. If a student took them in 10th grade, will they accept those scores? Yeah, they like to see you when you've taken them in 11th grade, but if you do really well on them in 10th grade, they're gonna, because of the pandemic, because of the changeover that's gonna happen, yeah, they'll probably look at them as well. You probably can send older scores if you did well. The assumption is that if you know the material in 10th grade, you're gonna know the material in 11th grade. You're probably better off waiting till next year to take it, though, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's probably the best idea. Okay. If a student, okay, that's a great idea. If your child doesn't know what they want to do with the, if hopefully they completed the U Sciences, that information will be on their account. Beginning the process of looking at it, start exploring places and interests and so forth. Have them try out getting involved in different clubs, different activities to kind of get a sense of interests would be good. If a student doesn't have an idea what they're interested in, the idea is to try to help them say, yeah, because finding out that you don't like something is just as valuable because you can cross it off the list. Ooh, I hate this. Ooh, this is terrible. That's just as valuable as saying I like something, because like I said, you can now take it off the list. Yes. Does the school offer help preparing essays? And is there other works for? Yes, they will be available next in the summer of in the summer and in the fall of 2023 during this junior year, at the end of junior year, during the summer. Absolutely. There we offer workshops, we offer essay assistance. Ms. Silverberg and I do all kinds of essay reviews and help students with their essays. Absolutely. That's what we're busy doing in the fall. Absolutely. Community work. I'm assuming volunteer. Okay, the question is information provided. Okay, how important is community work for college placements? If we're talking about volunteering, I think that's probably what you mean by community work. It's only a piece of, it's a piece of it. It's part of the extracurricular listing of things. And by the way, there is no requirement that students are required to do community service. It is not a requirement in the state of New Jersey. Okay, it's not a requirement. Some districts offer it. It is not a requirement in the Edison School District that students do community service or volunteer work. They can, it looks good, but it's not required. It helps, but it's not required. And is it a major part? No. If a student didn't do it, no, it's not going to affect it. I think that's, okay, I'm not sure what that was. I'm going to answer a few more questions. The question is college prep course really necessary? How many of them Get enrolled each year. I don't know what you mean by college prep course. I'm not sure I understand what that means. All of the courses at JP are college prep, if that's what you meant. I don't know what that means. All of our courses are college prep. Does internships or volunteering help in college admissions? Um, it doesn't hurt, it helps, yes. But is it a significant piece of the puzzle? Is it going to guarantee a student to get accepted to a highly competitive school? No. Will it help? It could, absolutely. It could help. It's part of the process. There are many pieces to getting accepted to college. Is it required? No. Again, it's not required. Essay writing, basically, we do classes. Your English teachers do that. They write an essay in their senior English class. They are writing their college essay. They're doing drafts of college essays. They're doing essays all the time. They do essays writing all the time. So the question about students prepping to write their college essays, absolutely. However, the college essay is different than any other essay that they're ever going to write. It's more introspective, and it's more about the students' feelings and so on. And the other piece of it is, it's the writing of, at the time, a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old, not a 35, 40 or whatever old parents are. It's the voice of the student, not the parent. Just want to say that. Okay. I know you want to help. That's not, you can assist, but it's not. And they have to come up with the topics. I do lots of brainstorming workshops in the summer, at the end of junior year. They'll do all those things. And then they write their essay, and they do start working on drafts over the summer. Again, we're going to be doing a myths workshop, a coffee with the counselor workshop. Recommendations for students, the letters of recommendation, the students counselor will write the recommendation, as well will write a recommendation if the school requires it, and also teachers. Student will get two academic teachers to write a recommendation. Usually it's the teachers in the junior year that write the recommendations, teachers that know the student well, not necessarily the teacher that gave the student an A. It's the teacher that knows the student well as a student in their class. And we give students tips. We'll give students tips about how to ask and who to ask and things like that when we go forward. Dorms, good question. Does every college need students staying in the dorms for 1 to 2 years? Is it mandatory? The answer is no. Some schools, depends on the school. Some schools require, and there are schools that have 95% or almost 100% of the students living on campus. And then there are other schools where most students are commuting. And then there are other schools where they stay on campus 1 year and then they move off campus or move home. So it's a variety of different options. And there are schools that do all of the above. Okay. I answered that already. I think the question is about doing volunteer work virtually. It's part of the extracurriculars. It'll be part of the student's resume. It'll be part of the student's activities that the student does. Is it absolutely required? In schools in the United States? No. But does it look good? Sure. Absolutely. when we send out transcripts, I think the question is about our transcripts. Do we charge to send transcripts to colleges? When the student is a current student, no. When the student graduates and wants a transcript sent to a different school, yes, there's a charge. I think the price is, I think it's $5. I'm not 100% sure what the actual number is right now. It's on the website. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not 100% sure what that price is, but it's on the website in terms of if for somebody who's an alumni who wants a transfer sent. But when a student is applying to colleges, there's no charge. At least as of now, there's no charge. Transcripts get sent out automatically to the schools when the student applies to those schools. So there's no charge. Taking geometry in sophomore year right now, it would have affected how the student did on the PSATs a little bit. And when they take the SATs should be taken in the junior year. PSATs are taken in the sophomore year. I would recommend PSATs wait till after geometry to take, and probably traditionally speaking, students take the SATs in the spring of their junior year. Our students tend to take them a little earlier because a lot of them are advanced in math. So basically, and they start taking them in the fall of their junior year. I would recommend if somebody is in geometry now that they wait till the spring of junior year, and that's when they take the SATs, like the March test. Okay, that's what I recommend. Not gonna answer that on here. Best time to take the SATs for the most part is in the junior year. Finish them by this June of the junior year, pretty much, so that everything's ready to go for senior year. Take the SATs December, March. The test is given in December for junior. Usually it's December for juniors, March, and then there's a May test, and then there's a June test. Depending upon what other courses they're taking, that's kind of a plan in terms of when to take them. I'm going to stay on for I'm going to give you another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to go off. I can't, this is getting a little long, and I have to get up in the morning to go to work. Teachers write one letter for each student. The teachers letters of recommendations. The question is, do students write letters of recommendations for multiple schools or multiple letters? No. Teacher's going to write one letter for the student, each student, and it goes to the multiple schools. That's how it works. And it's too complicated to try to say, I want this teacher for that school, this teacher for 2 teacher recommendations. Some schools, there are colleges that require that you have to have a STEM, like a math or science teacher, and a social science or humanities teacher. So basically your options are, for the most part, you're talking about a science teacher and a math teacher, and an English teacher or a social studies teacher or a language teacher as the second one. And that's the best way to do it, to cover all bases in terms of dealing with the student. Colleges, every college, when they look at a student's transcript, they will evaluate. Every college has its own system for weighing courses that a student takes, looking at the student's transcript. Why is that the case? Because our weighted GPA is different than another school's weighted GPA. Our unweighted GPA is different than the scales that we use. So basically what happens is that all schools will recalculate GPAs. Yes, they consider the rigor of the student's schedule in that process. So it's about the courses that a student took, the rigor of those courses that the student took, and how they did in those courses. That's the transcript. And that's how they evaluate. That's first and foremost when they look at an application. That's number one. Other things involved. Do they look at the electives? Some schools will look at them. Some schools will not look at them. Some schools will look at the cumulative GPA. Others will not. Some schools will recalculate and only use the academic areas. Other schools will not. Will they look at clubs and activities? Absolutely. It's called part of how most schools are using what's called a holistic review. They're looking at everything. So it includes a bunch of things. In terms of the order that they rate them in, always, every school that you talk to, every webinar, in-person visit I've ever been to, every school I've ever been to, again, it's the courses the student took, the rigor of the courses, and how they did in those courses. That's first. The transcript is first. Always the most important thing. Even more important than SATs or ACTs or test scores and all that. We don't rank students in Edison School District. There is no such thing as ranking. We don't rank students. They are placed in where they fall within their GPA falls within a range. We use deciles in terms of it, where the student falls and how many students falls in those deciles. We do not rank. Volunteer hours are not required. Does it look better on an application? Again, volunteer hours are not required. If your son or daughter wants to do volunteer hours, that's great. It is not required. Okay, I'm going to answer 2 more questions and I'm done. When you get to college, some schools you are required to apply under a major. Most schools, you can choose your majors and you can also change your major while you're at the school. So there are schools that require you to apply under a major or specialized programs. But most schools, when you apply to colleges, you can actually need to tell them usually by the end of sophomore year in college or beginning of junior year in college. That's when you must tell them. Certain programs you have to apply directly from out of high school. Lots of nursing programs may have direct admit programs. There are certain computer science these days because it's so competitive. In order to graduate in 4 years, engineering would be an area to focus in on. You don't necessarily have to say what kind of engineering, but you need to be in engineering within the School of Engineering in order to get it, because it's a very prescribed program. And in order to graduate on time, you need to follow the rules. If you change your way halfway through, you're not going to get out in 4 years. There are no limits to AP courses. Some schools will accept them, some schools will not, in terms of AP courses. For example, all of the highly competitive, the Ivy League schools like you to have them, but they won't accept them for credits because they want you to be in that school for 4 years. State schools, AP credits, they may have a limit in terms of how many credits they will accept. Every school is going to be different. So I can't give you the general information, but I know of students who basically started their freshman year and came in as sophomores. They had 30 credits from AP courses, and basically they were able to graduate in 3 years. So it depends on the school. It's a general question. And I think that is the last question I'm going to answer. I'll do one more because it's not 8:15 yet. I'll do one more and then I'm done. Okay, let me see. Let me find a good one. First of all, your child, we haven't been in school for 2 years, so there hasn't been a lot of interaction with students. Their freshman year, most of them were virtual, so therefore the question I'm being asked is there wasn't much interaction between the counselor and the students. Well, there hasn't been that much, but your son or daughter can meet with their counselor at any time. They can make an appointment to meet with their counselor to talk about whatever they'd like to talk about. But as they move up through the process, they will get to know their counselor. Ms. Silverberg and I tend to move in terms of working with students, starting to work with students for the most part. We can work with anyone, but we will, for the most part, most of our focus is on juniors and seniors in the fall and juniors in the spring because of the nature of helping students with their post-high school planning. That's pretty much where we're at. We start with them in the spring and work with them through the fall and into the spring of their senior year as well, of course, along the way. Some students, and students reach out to us, or the counselor reaches out to us, or the parents reach out to us. It's kind of a combination of things. On that note, I think I'm going to say good night. Thank you for attending. This will be posted. Have a wonderful day, evening, and see you at the next event. Take care.